Hi. Um, Usually I'd say this is Brayden, but I don't really care for the name Brayden. When I transitioned, because I was female first, I picked the name Brayden as a way to feel safer transitioning because it still held part of my other name. Um, had my initials from when I went by Brianna Ray. Brayden, Braedyn, B Ray was my gangsta name, as I would call it when I was a girl. But I actually prefer the name Wesley. My mom said that's what she would have named me if I was a boy, and that felt right. And middle name Ian. I met a girl in this real divine encounter, and she, she, long story short, she asked me what my name was, and I said I don't like my name. And she goes, "Well, what name do you like?" And without skipping a beat, I said Ian, and so she calls me Ian. uh, but I've been going by Braden for a while, but I prefer Wesley Ian. So this is Ian, and I'm here to share, to vent, I guess. This is my way of journaling. Journaling is not my strongest suit, and so videos are like that for me. And I'm sitting here at the park. It's been an interesting day thus far, and it seems like when I start my day in joy, it quickly turns to despair. And I think it's because of the joy triggers a lot of body memory of like drugs. Because for me, drugs was the way I found joy, power, confidence, and interestingly enough, societally speaking, when we see drug addicts, it seems like the opposite generally happens. At least that's what we usually put our attention on is drugs sort of tears down one and makes them not fit into society, makes them destroy their life. And as I discussed, for me, that was the opposite. So, being sober now, let's see, I got sober this last time in, it was like August 8th or 11th of last year. So, what is that? August to September, October, November, December, January, February. Yeah, so we're going like 6 months sober, and this time taking my sobriety like vastly different than how I've taken it all the previous times I've ever gotten sober. You know, being more conscious of how I'm feeling in sobriety and being male this time. All the other times I got sober, I was female, and realizing that all like not all the time that and if you look into any sort of substance abuse sort of um, information, one being I think her name is Amber Hollingsworth on YouTube channel. Put the shovel down, I believe. I think it's on. Maybe it's not her. Either way, that's also a good place for information. But there's somebody. Maybe it's Doc Snipes. Um, I think it might be her. Maybe I don't know. The point is, somebody mentioned that it's just really intense emotions that can trigger like a relapse. Like it's not necessarily like stressful situations. It's also positive ones, like any intense emotion. So it's like really hard whenever, a lot of like the goal of like life is like to feel joy. That's real hard when you're have a life of addiction and you're trying to be sober, because that's honestly even more triggering for me than like the depression, the like all negative sort of experiences like don't necessarily trigger me. Like I'm cool with those. Like before I started using drugs, like I was in a place of that more like like my life has been pretty much a mosh posh of that. And mosh posh, is that the correct term? Mod posh? I don't know, but that's what I use. Mosh posh. We're gonna go with it. And the point is, I so I wake up and I'm enjoyed. I'm like, fantastic. This is lovely. But then quickly something in me panics and goes, I can't sustain this, but I know something that can, which is a lie. I know, but I don't know that. Right? That's sort of the struggle is like your body when you've been using something for so long, and it creates that experience. It's like you're not thinking about how like, yeah, well, when that wears off, so does that. So you're not necessarily sustaining it, but it's like it's easier to sustain when I lack the resources of how to sustain the joy within myself sober. Whenever I know that, oh, I can just go spend some money or hit up a friend, smoke a little bit, and boom, it's there for many hours, and then just smoke a bit more, and it's there again. You know, and so it's like the hardest part for me in this journey is like realizing like I'm like at the precipice of this joy that feels 100% unsustainable by myself without substance. And then to top it off, it's like, and then if I find a way to sustain it, it's still long standing a long still a long standing trigger. So it's like the longer I'm able to maintain that joy sober, I'm still also then entering relapse mode that same duration. And so it's just really hard, um, feeling like the best life I could live without drugs is one where I'm also not experiencing joy, but then I'm just experiencing like nihilism, which I also struggle with, and that's not fun. So none of it's fun, and I'm going, but I know life was manageable for me on drugs. So it's rough because I don't have the experience of things falling apart for me when I use. I have the experience of things sort of coming together for me. And so then my brain goes, so then why am I fighting it? And I'm going, well, socially speaking, it's frowned upon. Physically speaking, it's not the best for my body, but and then my brain goes, yeah, but you managed to be disciplined with yourself to make sure you still eat and sleep, so you're still actually healthy. And I'm like, yeah, but am I? Because then and it's all by comparison. I'm like, nobody else needs it. Like, the point, the point is, I wake up in joy sometimes, or I can get there, and then it crumbles, and I'm in a worse place than if I didn't wake up in joy. So now it's like I'm avoiding joy, but some part of me craves it. And like right now, I'm like fiending, I'm fiending, and I'm just going, what would it hurt? Because I lived a pretty good life by myself, being able to use drugs and create a life I wanted. But at the same time, it's like one truth is if you have to use anything outside of you like that, a substance or another, to create that feeling, then that feeling is sort of not true from within you. Like if I smoke meth, my power is now outside of me because I can only get that power if I smoke that drug, which means I have to trust the dealer, and so it's like you put a lot of power outside you, where like the truest form of power is like whenever you can create that feeling for yourself from within you, on nothing but you. But when you're in relapse mode, it's like those thoughts aren't there. You're not thinking clearly like that, and being trans and being an addict, a high functioning addict, is hard. And I'm like seeing, it's just, and I'm pretty to myself, so I'm going, I don't even know if anybody else struggles with this. And I know in a general sense, like, of course, there are people that struggle with that. And I'm like, but then the ego me is like, yeah, but no one struggles like me. No one gets me. And I'm like, I don't get me. I don't get why it's like this, but, and I'm just kind of rambling. I'm all over the place, it feels like. And and I think of, oh, maybe I'm supposed to like share my story about this journey for me, and I'm like, feels like a long story. Where would I start? How do I organize that? That just doesn't seem like it. Just then I get dread, and I don't know what to do with my free time. I use drugs to work, so I'm going or to study. So I was a real productive addict, and so it's interesting being in the experience of addiction, where like most times you'll see like when someone really struggles with addiction, it's like they get sober and then boom, it's like they're working again. Their relationships improve, da 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 da. And for me, it's like kind of the opposite. I'm like, when I stop using, I'm like, how do I work? How do I engage with another? How do I have a relationship? And then something in me wants those relationships, wants to work, but then is going, I don't know how to do that without that drug because that's how I learned to do it. And so it's really hard being a high functioning addict that's also a hermit and likes to be alone. I don't necessarily think I like to be alone, but I like to do. I don't know about that. I may have to reflect on that more, but the point is, it's just hard. It's hard in many ways. It's like I feel like I can't relate to normal functioning society people, civilians, as they're called, the regular population. Um, because those conversations and interactions feel shallow for me. But then when I engage with, people that feel more closer to understand me, like other addicts, it's usually like I don't relate because they're not high functioning addicts like me, and so therefore there's like, it's like I'm not in the club, like I'm not in any club, and I'm like I just want the T-shirt. I'm just kidding, but the point is, I it's like I don't know where I fit in to really connect with any person, and but I understand both sides. But then in that, it's like no one really understands me. Um, and it's people will be like, "Oh, we connected really well," and I'm like, "Yeah, we did connect really well on your end, but for me, I'm still missing something," and that's hard. Just wanting to belong somewhere and can kind of belong everywhere and anywhere, but when I belong there, then a part of me doesn't belong. I don't know if that makes any sense. And it's like a lot of people, it's like they can show up one place and it's like all of them, all that they are, belongs. All that they've been through, all their story matches wherever they are, whatever people they're around. For me, I show up and it's like one part of me belongs, but one part of me is misunderstood. One part of me is too spiritually like advanced in a sense in comparison to where they're at in their journey. And so it's like I'm always understanding them, but I'm not being understood on the other side in totality, how I can understand them. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, like it really kind of sucks. And and that's really kind of why in this point in my journey, it's like I've really turned to God or source or whatever you want to call it, like heaven, and trying to build that connection, but they're invisible. So I'm just talking like a madman to myself, to them, and still feeling sort of lonely, knowing I'm not alone. And um, So yeah, that's where I'm at today. Trying to figure out. Like I tried to get back on Instacart. I used to do a lot of delivery stuff back when I was female, and I enjoyed it. She enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. Listen, it's hard to talk about who I was because I view her as a separate sort of self. That's a whole other story, but it's confusing, is what I'm saying. I make it confusing, I think, but that's how my mind processes it. So that's something. And really, all I'm getting at here is just it's hard to function in a way that feels good when I only ever learned that with drugs or in unhealthy connections and not really knowing where to turn to, what to do, and seeing that God has sort of shut down ways in which I would pass my time prior because I feel like I'm being asked to do something different or bigger, but then feeling the lack of ability because I only ever was able to actualize those sort of impulses or guidances with drugs. And so yeah, that's where I'm at today. Thanks for listening.